Hey there dreamers, welcome back to the channel. I have something really cool to show you today. This is a node-based system of movement useful for puzzle games, something like Hitman Go or Deus Ex Go, any of those mobile Go games. Also useful for point and click type adventures or something like that, at least for moving. And it's pretty easy to set up and very easy to extend on as well. As we can see, we can just grab one of these nodes, drag it where it should be, and it automatically draws the line. Then all we have to do to connect is plug this into here and plug that into there, and we're all set. We can now go to that node. If you're interested in learning how to make this, stick around. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get out a cylinder. And this is what's going to be the basis of our sculpt, or our object here. Now I like to make sure that this is correct in its dimensions. Sometimes it's a little bit off when you first pull it out. Okay, so there it is. This thing will not be collidable or visible. We want it to be grabbable, and I'll just give it a label. Any label works. Now on top of this, I want to paint something. So I'm going to put on tentacle snap and get out the rule fleck, and I want to paint a circle. Now that doesn't look like a circle yet, but if we clone this and then rotate it around and then hit left on the D-pad a bunch, we can fill in the gaps with the same paint stroke. That creates this semicircle. We can then merge the paintings, and then if you make another clone of this, we can click L3 to flip it, right? So now I have these two paintings and I can merge them together. Now it's just one full painting. We can make this really flat. That's a great way to make a circle. And the reason I like this is because now, if I turn this off, we can see that we can make this a hollowed out circle. It only goes to a certain point before it completely disappears. So there it is. There's our half circle. So here is our completed little object there. And so preview and visibility off looks like this. Cool. So I'm just going to give this thing a little bit of glow, like so, and yeah, that looks good. So if we want these nodes to look connected, we're going to need to draw a line between them, right? Now, with this method, you can make these things connect at really far distances, and that's completely up to your needs, your gameplay needs, or whatever you're trying to make. Just to keep this thing kind of simple, I'm not going to go super far, but trust me, you could take this thing really far. So this is 2, 4, 6 meters, so we'll just have it be the max distance it could go. These nodes can be apart is 6 meters. Let's go ahead and draw a painting on here. So I'm going to scope back in. And here is how our painting is going to work. I'm going to start here at the edge, and I'm going to draw all the way to the center of the furthest one it can reach. Okay, so that will make sense very soon why I'm doing that. I'll give it a little bit of glow just so it matches, and let's go ahead and make it nice and flat. There we go. So why did I draw it to the center? Let's go ahead and show you why. We're going to get out a microchip, and in order to determine how far that line needs to go, we're going to use a laser scope. The endpoint we can see here can be adjusted with this, right? So we're going to use a laser scope to determine how far that thing should draw. So let's go ahead and turn this back off. I'm going to place the laser scope at the same exact distance and starting point and end point as the painting, right? So this starts here in the X position, and instead of using the range, I'm going to use this fall off. Now, it was roughly 6 meters away. However, this needs to end at the center here. So that's 0.25 meters. So I'll just subtract, and there we are at 5.75. So now this lines up perfectly with that painting spot there. So we can see that if I move this, they're perfectly lined up. And now what we can do is get out a NOT gate and plug this into here. So if this goes into this painting, into the endpoint, like so, and one thing I forgot to do here is set this. So got to set the detection mode appropriately. Remember, we made it invisible. So I could leave it like this, or you can use both if you want to be safe. Okay, so now we see that it's stopping perfectly here. It's no longer going to the center, right? So it can, no matter how close it is, it'll always adjust the painting so that it only goes to the edge of that painting, right? Pretty cool. Now, obviously, hey, real quick before we get back into the tutorial, I just wanted to announce, since I can, I've been nominated for a couple of Impies. One of them is for Favorite Video Creator, and another one is Most Helpful Dreamer. Now, Most Helpful Dreamer is a community category, meaning the community gets to vote. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to the voting page in the description of this video, and if you'd like to vote for me, you're more than welcome to. If you think that I've helped you at all and you think I deserve the Impy for Most Helpful Dreamer, I would love to have your vote. If not, you want to vote for someone else, it's totally cool. But I thought I would go ahead and make this announcement. So to anyone who nominated me for either of those categories, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I've absolutely loved making these videos for everyone that watches this channel, and I'm excited to keep making more of them. So with that being said, thank you again. If you want to vote, again, I'll leave the link down below. Let's get back to the tutorial. So what I'm going to do now, really quickly, I'm just going to clone this painting so that we have 4 of them. Let me go ahead and do this. So I'm going to clone it like so. There we go. Now we have 4 of them pointing in all 4 directions. Now these I don't want to merge because they're not the same painting. And now we just have to set up 3 more laser scopes. So I'll go northeast, southwest, just because that's easy for me to remember. Okay, so now we have this thing that will detect other nodes nearby and draw their things accordingly. One other thing we need to adjust here is, say we had a bunch of these all over the place like this. They connect, but then they also show these other lines that don't connect to anything, and that doesn't look very good. So what we want to do is delete them if there isn't anything going on detection-wise. So if we don't detect another object, then we want to just delete that line because there's no reason for it to be there. So I'll get out a calculator here. So let's say we say if this is equal to 0, and remember this is for the north line here, let's go ahead and delete this painting. Okay, so since there's no node there, it should delete that painting. Yet, if we had another one here, it would draw the line, but then there wouldn't be another one over here. So if we set this up for all of these, then obviously we have a way to be able to make them work. So let me go ahead and copy all this and set this up. Okay, so with this setup, we can see that it'll delete all of them whenever there is nothing to detect. So now we can kind of drag these things around and set up, like, you know, a little map, little area. And when we start time, the things that should connect will, and the things that can't connect to anything go away. Now, this is getting completely unruly for me, and I'd like to clean it up, so I'll go ahead and do that now. Okay, so this looks a little bit better. I've moved the laser scopes into here, and I've moved the stuff into here, and I'll explain why in just a second, why I moved them into 2 separate things. But this looks really bad, but when it starts time, you notice that all those wires kind of go away. And that's because a lot of things are deleted. If we had something here, we would see that, let me make sure I had time stopped there. So if I have something here, then not all the wires are going to go away, and we have this stuff still sitting here. So this is a lot of things that are being unused that we don't want to stick around, right? Including the laser scopes. There's no reason to have all these laser scopes. They're just going to eat at thermo, and once time starts, we don't care about them anymore. So there's a lot of stuff we can do here to optimize this. So I'll get out a little timer here, and let's just say after 0.1 seconds, we can delete a bunch of stuff. So we'll get rid of the laser scopes. If we're going to get rid of the laser scopes, we need to be able to hold on to the values in these NOT gates, right? So here is where some personal preference comes into play here. I think what I would like to do, and again, you don't have to do things this way, but I think it looks better in my opinion. I'm going to get out 4 nodes, like so. And actually, I might move this inside of this chip. So these are 4 nodes here. I'm going to unplug all of these from the paintings and instead plug them into these nodes. And then I'm going to plug those nodes into the paintings. And the reason this is different is because this one's going into the north node, correct? The north painting. So that's going in there like that. Now, if there's something in the way, there's a value being stored inside of this node. But if we get rid of the laser scopes, like we did there, this goes to 1, right? The value changes. It's not quite right. And since that's the case, this got set to 0 and deleted itself, okay? So what we want to do is we want to also get rid of this chip. However, these all go to 0. Now what we can do is we can wire these nodes into themselves, which kind of freezes the value in place. However, you can see there's an issue. This went to 1, and that's not correct. And that's because there is a frame delay between the laser scopes and the values that come out of them. We can see this right at the beginning. In here, this flashes, right? We can see this goes to 1. So it takes a frame for this value to make it in. So what we can do is, instead of setting this to 0.1, we'll set this to 0.033, which is 1 frame. And that will turn this on, right? So now we can see that the values are correct in here. And then we can go ahead and delete this entire thing. So it'll turn that chip on and then delete it. And so now we can see this value was held, and the only thing we have left are these nodes. I suppose these nodes don't even need to be in a microchip. These can be just out here in the chip, like so, which leaves this to look like this when it's done. Again, all personal preference. I know it's pretty messy, but this seems like one of the best ways to do it. Anyways, so that's how that works, this part. Now let's do the part where we connect them with information. Okay, so let's put this in a different microchip for sure. This is going to contain some information about the node itself. Mostly, it's going to contain a node, and we can go ahead and name this. And now we want this gizmo here to be right in the center. So I will fix the grid. There we go. So it's right in the center. Perfect. Now we want to tell other nodes when this is active, and conversely we want other nodes to tell this node when they're active, when it's appropriate anyways, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And the other thing we could set up, and again this really depends on your this depends on how you're going to use this, right, for your gameplay. But for a simple case, let's just go ahead and say if this thing is grabbed, which we need to attach that to the sculpt here. So there we go, it's attached to the sculpt. So if it's grabbed and the previous one or the next one is active, then we can like update some variables or something like that. Alternatively, you could use, turn the tag on and allow, a puppet or something to go to that. I don't generally like to do that. That seems like that would be potentially more wires than necessary to set something like that up. Or you'd have to use exclusive gates, which sometimes bug out. So instead, I will have two variables that I'll just leave up here for now, X and Z. So if this is the case, I actually want to plug this in here. That'll go into a signal manipulator on a pulse, and this will take in the scene space transform of the node. So we'll split it and split it again, and these will go into variable modifiers. This one will be X at set, this one will be set Z, again when powered on, and the pulse is what will power these on. So something like that could work, right? And just so we can see this, let's go ahead and put this into a 3-number combiner. So we'll plug X in here, Z in here, and I'll get out my location displayer. Here I have a location displayer. If you haven't seen this, I'll leave the link in the description. It just displays stuff. So we can see the values are of X and Z right now are 0, which is fine because this is actually at 0. Now let's go ahead and take a look real quick at how we could set something like this up. And what helps a lot is X-ray. So the active from this one will go into the input here, and this will go in there, vice versa. So here we can see that if this one is active, then it will allow for that grab thing. Otherwise, if this is active, it'll allow for this one to grab. Okay, so let's get out a trigger zone so we can activate that. Let's just use something like this. This will detect node, right? So if this is here, we can see this is active, and so that output goes into here, which if we grabbed this, both of these conditions would be met, and the values of the tag in here will go into X and Z. So if we start time, we can see the values of X, Y, and Z, and if I grab here, we can see the new values of X, Y, and Z are at this location. Okay, so here I have a little mock player with a follower that goes to X, Y, and Z, and it has a little trigger zone that looks for node. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and place this here. And now we can start time, and when I click this, we can see the block will go there, and when I click it, it'll go there. Cool. So that's really the basics of it here, and now you can create really neat things. So we can create like a sort of level here. Let's go ahead and make one. I'll just go ahead and make a nice little level, and something to keep in mind is that these don't need to be equidistant from each other, right? We can have kind of interesting little setups here, right? So by default, we can see what this looks like, right? These ones can't connect because they're not directly left and right. This doesn't connect to anything, right, etc. So let's try and quickly set up a little level here and see how fast we can do this. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just clone these around. Oops. Clone these 3 things. We'll just get like a neat little level here. And maybe we'll have some sort of interesting path. We don't want them all to connect, right? So if we don't want them all to connect, then we have to make sure that we don't plug the input and outputs of these into each other. And we also need to make sure that we turn off the switches. So for this one, I will turn off north. And this one, I will turn off south. You can see I've labeled these since that last clip there. That's because this is going to be remixable. Okay, so let's say we don't want that, and let's see, how else could we make this interesting? Let's say that these two don't connect either on the north and south side. North and south, like that. Okay, and let's say these ones don't connect west and east. So like this, west and east. Okay, so there's a little level layout, right? So the easy way to set this up is to do this, draw the path you want first, and now while time is playing, since a bunch of stuff is deleted, now we can set up the wires really easily because we can see where we want to connect them. So, for example, this one will go here, right? And we don't want it to go there, and we can see that very clearly with this line. Now this one needs to plug into 3 ways, right? We can see there's a line going up, to the right, and left. So we'll plug one in here, one in there, and one in here. This one only has one way it can go, so we just plug it into that one. Now this one plugs into here, and there. This one has 2 places to plug into, so does this one. And so you just go node by node like this, and it's super easy to set up as long as you just don't miss one, right? And there we go. So we have this fully built, and that took, what, 30 seconds? Let me get that player block back out. Okay, so there we go. We started time, got the player block, and now we can move this to these points. So from here, we can't move up, right? And if we go over here, then we can't move up, right? And so we can only move to the spots that we connected these nodes to, right? We can't make any weird jumpy moves. We can't move anywhere that they're not connected to. Now let's talk about thermal limits real quick, because obviously there is a limit to how many of these you can have. So we're currently sitting at 1% gameplay, that's including this. You can have quite a few of these, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. However, you got to keep in mind there's a lot of laser scopes and a lot of wires. So let's go ahead and pull out 50, 3, 4, 5. So there's 50 of these, which brings us up to 18% gameplay, which is really high, considering there's not that much here. Now we can see that 17% are things, including gadgets, wires, sculptures, paintings, puppets, and sounds. So if we start time, we do lose 11%. We go down to 8, which is a lot better. And these things are about as clean as they could possibly get in terms of what they're holding on to. Now the tags, there's a lot of tags, but you can have thousands of tags active in the scene, and but they do add to thermo. One last thing I'd like to point out is that these actually work very well at other angles too. So it doesn't always have to be in a grid necessarily. You could do something like this where they're in a triangle. Now it's the same thing, so these still work exactly the same way. You should be able to travel to and from. It just only draws the appropriate lines. Okay, so there it is all set up. So now we can see I can move here, and I can move there, and we have this nice cool little triangle thing. So now we have this cool little diagonal pattern here that we can use. We can't go up and down here though. Now, it is a little bit off here, and that's unfortunate. Let me see if we can... It actually looks like the bounding box is a little bit different. So ignore my previous statement about that. So you may have to adjust your bounding box or your sculpture detail, since it didn't really make that much of a difference in the test earlier in terms of thermo. Maybe just keep it a little bit tight, so not completely loose. But this way these look better. Obviously this didn't draw a perfect angle, but that's not what it was made for. So it was only made to look in 4 directions. Anyways, you get it. So there it is. There's the point and click node. Can be used for point and click games. It could be used for puzzle games like Hitman Go, Deus Ex Go, any of those Go mobile games, or any other puzzle game that you'd like where this would be helpful. If you found this enjoyable, please let me know in the comments. I always appreciate the feedback from everybody who writes comments in here. If you feel like voting, go for it. If you don't, or you want to vote for someone else, that's totally cool. I don't hold a grudge. It's all good. Anyways, I hope everyone's doing well, stays safe. I'll see you next time.